Hello Little Geek and Little Geek sans. Forget big John Wick fans. How are you? Do you see the dog? In the film I have exactly the same, except that mine does nothing, he eats and he sleeps briefly. Let's go back to the chapter 4 of John Wick, which reveals to us things on the big table, and suddenly here's everything you need to know about this organization, and it's just after wishing you a good time. Let's go. At the beginning of the franchise, the movie presents a simple story about his contract killer coming out of retirement to take revenge on the people who killed her dog, a gift from his late wife, Ellen, with only hints about a peg which left him behind. In Chapter 2, the origins of franchise were growing, with a hotel reserved for assassins and markers in gold representing the debts between hitman, climaxing with inclusion from the high table, a criminal council almost mythological, which becomes the most great enemy of John after having assassinated one of its members on the continental lands. The high table puts a bounty on Wick's head and cut any access to his former privileges, something that left to reverse in Chapter 3 but ends up being drawn deeper into the web organization in this Chapter 4. John understood that to be free from table and its rules, he must address its disappearance in a much more creative, otherwise it will never be rid of his influence on his life and on anyone he cares about. Ultimately, the rules of the table that there once was completely John Wick of Vienna, the only thing that can free him. The table is an elite board populated sweet crime lords from family of Oran who govern the peg featured in the John Wick franchise, with ultimate authority over all criminal enterprise and its various. Later, the table to have origins dating back to the time of the ancient Aztec Empire and more older than any of the major governments on Earth. Scope of the table extends to all aspects of politics and society. This allows it to operate without no interference from leaders, global or law enforcement, guaranteeing concentration uninterrupted on its own business, most of which are managed by the use of assassins highly elitist like John Wick. With every franchise film, the organization is become a more important antagonist, and as John sailed within his rules and outwitted his agents, he greatly contributed to the construction of a world completely different. The table and its turmoil, whether with Quick or between its own members, have created some of the best dramatic elements of the franchise and continue to distinguish it from other purple action franchises. These rules and manage the repercussions and a showdown that has become the main source of elements for many main characters of the franchise. At the head of the table is the Elder, a mystical leader present in the Moroccan desert, followed by representatives of organizations, criminals, the Camorra, Yakuza, Cosa Nostra, Prodgo's Great Triad Ghetto, as well as Latin and South American cartels. Gianni D'Antonio and later Santino by Antonio formerly held positions of first plan, but both were killed in the Chapter 2, and the oldest member to have been presented was the Marquis of Gramont in Chapter 4. The mother, adoptive of John from the Roscoe organization, Roma, had enough influence to protect it over the years. The table uses agents with objectives specially designated to manage its cases as the arbiter who represents the noses and is an enforcer of the will of the table with the means of punish anyone. Finally, the regulations of this one another and Arbinger, who functions as an emissary for the formal questions concerning the large table, such as depths of hotel or the presidency of duel between table members from other agents, with less specific titles included. Zero, an elite assassin employed to attempt to kill Weak in Chapter 3, and Shidi, who operate on behalf of the Marquis from Gramont. The table has a great influence not only on the underworld but on all sectors of society. It aims to exclude out of respect, but often resorts to exclude out of fear, often neglecting the well of what she governs in favor of a method of operation egocentric which mainly involves its own preservation. As for John and all those associates who offer him a safe corner once in a while, like the King, Bowie Winston, and his caretaker Sharon, she resorts to the most punishments harsh to encourage people to follow the rules. Besides the arbitrator and his agents, Subkitchi also has an organization called the administration that deals with orders from the table and distribute them internationally through its operators. It keeps due diligence records on all hitmen operating under the table, giving the order to start and stop certain contracts at will, as well as increase rewards for captures. Unlike members, often melodramatic, of the table, administrators and operators show watchful, capable and unofficial at any time. To join the table you have to be member of a criminal family from Oran, and the privilege of sitting at the table, and transmitted through a family line. In the case of the D'Antoniels, Santino had to murder his sister Jana for take his place, walking in a line very precarious between what would give him power and what would condemn him to dead. Power comes with way too much benefits, and some people will stop at nothing to get it, while others, like the king, would prefer the erroneous king president. An underground empire built on the network of the soup kitchen, and almost became adjutant of the table once he swore loyalty when he was confronted the referee and was allowed to operate independently, that he later sincerely betrayed. In spite of other criminals or assassins on duty are usually not so flippant about to the rules of the big table, but the king has leverage over secrets that he knows of his members. Senior members of the Marquis table, Vincent de Gramont, receives the full authority over the council by its members in Chapter 4, on the understanding that it will be the one who will finally bring down John Wick, a sadistic man who does not think not to hurt individually the people in his service. He aims not only to kill Wick but to kill the idea of John Wick. He understands that Yesu is become a beacon of hope for all those who under the table want to leave the underworld and its oppression. The Marquis thinks that he is above the table, but thanks to Winston, Wick finds a way to foil him through a hidden rift in the old rules, a system of rules dating from the beginning of the training of the big table. At a given moment of history, business was often settled between two people during a duel, and was not prolonged by a gratuitous bloodbath involving all allies like most of the members. Higher up the table, the Marquis thinks he's above the rules, but yes, that's what they were, corrupted by self-interest and organization cruelty. Under the old rules, a member of the table can be challenged to a duel by a other member, and John uses this rule to engage the Marquis in combat. Singular, the Marquis tries to refuse, evoking the status of his communia of weak. But after John's name Jordan Wickend was redeemed by the coat of arms of Russian family Karoma, the Marquis did no choice but to accept. After some deliberations with Arabinger, he decides to fight a duel with pistols at dawn at the Church of the Sacred Heart in Paris, and accepts conditions